Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Com4, your true partner for IoT connectivity. Unlock the future with Com4's free IoT test kit. Get up to 5 SIM cards, each with 100 megabytes of data, supporting 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, LTE-M, and NB-IoT. Revolutionize your IoT projects with ease and reliability. Start your IoT journey now at com4.no. Welcome, Brian, to the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's kick this off by having you give a quick introduction about yourself and the company for our audience, if you wouldn't mind.
Ryan Bronson. I work for Capgemini, and I run the telco, media, and high-tech business for them. It'll be 5 years next month. Maybe we'll get into why I joined Capgemini. Before that, I was running a public company called Radisys that we sold to Mukesh Ambani, which is now part of Reliance Jio and everything that's been built out there in India.
Very cool. Yeah. So what brought you to Capgemini?
Well, I had sold Radisys to Reliance, and then, I had a good run there and was doing some work in private equity, and I definitely wanted to stay in and around the IT/OT convergence space. So we may get into telco infrastructure and all of that, but I heard through the grapevine that Capgemini was buying Ultran. And inside of Ultran, there was a bunch of really cool assets in and around telco infrastructure, network elements. They had great Wi-Fi capabilities, software product engineering. And I thought, what a cool way to disrupt what is now IT/OT convergence and enabling things like Gen AI, and then joined to help them stand up what is now Capgemini Engineering.
And for the audience who may not be as familiar with Capgemini, what does Capgemini do as an organization?
So Capgemini as an organization is one of the top 5 global professional services and enabling technology providers. If we can unpack the pieces of that. And then inside of Capgemini, which, by the way, is over 20 million annually in revenue and has 350,000 employees, are really cool and differentiated assets and capabilities. Like what I mentioned in Capgemini Engineering, we have now close to 60,000 data scientists and those folks that work in and around what we may talk about next. And we really help enable digital transformation for our customers.
Yeah, speaking of digital transformation, AI has played a pretty big role in that. As it relates to the IoT space, we've seen AI kind of come in there and really start to play a role in those solutions. But when it comes to the deploying, the configuring of IoT, how is AI really playing a role to make that easier and better?
Well, and I'll maybe deep myself a little bit, but one of the big challenges with simply standing up anything about IoT was connectivity. And finding enough spectrum and getting it allocated in a way that it could handle and track, manage, ingest all of the IoT devices. And not that it's been largely solved, but with 5G and Edge, et cetera, we've come a long way. But then after Edge, you still have to be able to connect with all those devices. And what happens with all that data that's being collected that you can now turn into actionable intelligence? And that's what AI and Gen AI will help with a ton, because the count of devices, the nature of which all the information flows, getting that data as close to that asset or that oil rig or that car as possible, only things like AI and Gen AI can help make that happen. There's just too much to process.
Yeah, and how do you think that's affecting businesses, ability or interest in getting into the IoT space? So kind of that bar or barrier to entry, it seems like I imagine that would be bringing it down to be able to enable more successes with IoT deployments so that people see kind of the benefits of what IoT can do for their business because of the power of AI kind of in all of it together.
It helps a ton, but then there's been some practical steps that have brought comfort to the boardroom and the C-suite. And some of them have been, and we'll work all of the data privacy and all the other things that can kind of go in and around the wrapper. But from a business improvement perspective, the industries have come a long way by providing specific use cases, customer support. I see tons of traction around remote maintenance, extending out the life of capital equipment, maybe not having to be in the minefield or in the oil field as much, do that remotely. And by the way, COVID and nothing was good about it, but it forced us to also think differently about how do we monitor, measure, and perform Then there's the other side where others have gone beyond those what I would consider table stakes and started to be more disruptive. Things like dog food bowls and monitoring pets, their food consumption, their behavior. I can give you lots of really hopefully softball examples, but that's what's come a long way.
I want to kind of pull the thread a little bit on talking about connecting machines and being able to do things more remotely, especially in the manufacturing sector, which is a really interesting space. I think we've seen a lot of IoT adoption recently. How is the combination of AI and IoT or AIoT really changing the way the manufacturing sector is running, basically? They're able to connect machines and equipment now to the internet to be able to pull data from them, make better decisions. But just like kind of if you were to sum it up to somebody who might not be as familiar, how would you say those two technologies or groups of technologies are really playing a role in that industry for the better?
Well, I mean, if you go pre those two dimensions, you had a manufacturing floor that was producing something, and it was all either rudimentary AI work or manual intervention that resulted in, how do we derive 20% savings, or how do we bring this product to market 50% sooner? But the first challenge then was connectivity, bringing edge devices to collect this information on the manufacturing floor when spectrum, wireless coverage was limited to begin with. And maybe the company didn't want to pay for it. Now there's ways to bring that genuine connectivity to the floor. That was the next step. And then, okay, now you're connected and you can connect to those pieces of equipment. What is it? What do you want it to tell you? Whether it needs a new motherboard, whether it needs a software upgrade, whether there is leakage, or shrinkage in a particular product that you're trying to manufacture. Then that happened. But then beyond that, the scalability of it and turning it into actionable intelligence and bringing it to a corporate headquarters that was across the globe, or even to a hyperscalers offsite cloud area, that's been the last dimension where AI and in particular Gen AI has allowed that to start to happen.
From your experience with working with customers in the manufacturing space, are there any use cases or success stories you can talk us through at even a high level?
To me, there's tons on the disruptive side, which we can speak to, but it's important in the hype cycle of things to work with partners and clients in this case to show them tangible ROI. And then tangible ROI come back to simply maintaining, extending the life out, caring, feeding for their precious assets that they spend a lot of money on deploying. Again, that could be manufacturing equipment, that could be dump trucks in a mine, it could be forklifts and moving equipment around, on a manufacturing port, it could be shipping ports. But those kind of thought processes and use cases have been the difference maker to then have those companies take the next step and say, wow, okay, if we can have this kind of savings and efficiency here, might we then start to think about how we could accelerate drug discovery, how we can really extend out the life of your pet, or, how do we bring home health genuinely into the home and eliminate or provide more real-time support to patients. I see that as the evolution.
Yeah, the manufacturing space is really interesting. I think not just being able to connect machines and equipment to the internet, but the ability to kind of extend that beyond where things are being manufactured through the entire supply chain. We're seeing IoT and AI really play a role, right? So it's not just creating a connected experience in one location, it's being able to connect it throughout the entire journey of whatever is being manufactured. So with the companies that you all work with, let's say like as an IoT partner for enterprises, what are some of the big challenges that you see at this time that companies kind of face and maybe come to you asking for help in order to solve? Because the challenges, I think, in the IoT space have definitely changed over the years as technology's matured and gotten better. But there are still obviously challenges that present themselves today. And I'm curious from your vantage point, what are some of those challenges that are really top of mind for the customers that you work with?
To me, it depends on the industry, but in the main is, where do I start? So for those that have, jumped off the rock and dove into embracing what IoT and then obviously leveraging AI and Gen AI can do for them, whether again, it's on manufacturing floor or on, out in the field or what have you, truck rolls, the list goes on. It's helping them decide how to make that first move. And what I and we have determined, it's not always the case because you want to be attentive and guide the customer where they want to go, but it's that lower bar and jump over that lower bar, see that and I mean savings. I don't mean by employee reduction per se. I'm talking about customer satisfaction. I'm talking about freeing up your employees to increase the knowledge base inside of a company. It's not just about saving money. That's how we've started. And quite frankly, we've got over 300 existing projects that Capgemini and close to 1,000 in the pipe. And I mean, they're all relatively small, and it's because now companies are willing to at least jump off that small rock and to see what's possible.
How do you think the fragmentation of the IoT ecosystem plays a role in that confusion early on for companies when they're looking to figure out how to even get started on their journey?
It actually, it's quite a bit. I won't obviously, get into the names of the fragmentation, but there's so many steps. So even if you buy that piece of manufacturing equipment or that new dump truck or that new heister, they have the ability, or that new car, even have the ability to be connected, etc. But it's really the fragmentation of what's next. What's edge mean? We have all sorts of edge. We have all sorts of software programs. What cloud provider do we use? And what gets stored on site? What could be hybrid, public? And then I don't have an organization to digest and understand the actionable intelligence that's coming out in it. And there's lots of providers that are purporting to do that, but it's just that. There's a lot of providers. And so one of the many benefits meant to be a Capgemini plug is with scale, we have that one-stop shop ability to walk our clients through that. And we're not the only ones, but that's fragmentation. We understand, we didn't say much about it, and it's my background, but we understand telco infrastructure. We understand wireless connection and wireline connection. We have products that actually do that. So it helps the fragmentation by bringing a one-stop shop.
This has always been a pain point for companies that have existing infrastructure in place. They have existing tooling systems already set up, is the interoperability with bringing in new technologies into the fold in order to improve beyond where they are. How do you all approach that when you talk to a company that's worried about the interoperability of AIoT technologies and solutions?
I would encourage, depending on the use case, to do more of a greenfield than a grayfield. And it's my opinion, it all depended on the situation. But the more you try to do, okay, I have an existing footprint and I want to make it AI, IoT friendly, it could have the highest impact, but it might come with the most complexity. So the idea would be to outfit a particular new warehouse, or start with one shipping port, and work it back from there. And then as time goes on, as they retrofit and or build out new, it'll make it that much easier. But we design devices and connectivity again. We can work on bridging those gaps. As time goes on, the hyperscalers and the other people in the ecosystem, players in the ecosystem, have worked on that grayfield scenario, which is making it easier. But by default, it becomes a higher bar to jump over.
Let me ask you, kind of as we look into the future from where we are now, what are things that you all have your eye on as far as expecting to happen, excited to happen in the IoT, the AIoT space? I think there's a lot of stuff people have talked about, from 5G. You've already mentioned Edge a little bit, but maybe expand on that. Use cases that might be kind of the next wave of adoption for these technologies. Anything along those lines would be great.
So for me, it's just the adoption and the settling of the hype cycle. So it's definitely, you wake up every morning, you hear about, it's going to change the world and it might disrupt employee bases, and I'm not going to comment on any of that. But what I would say is, once these smaller implementations become more concrete, and mention the 300 wins, and there's already 800 plus in the pipe, and they're all relatively small and they'll build off of each other, then the privacy concerns will start to placate and it will get into a run mode. And what we're going to find is that it's still an enabler to everything that we do. And there's still going to be that incremental knowledge that all of us and the employee base gets. And so my prognosis is that our customer experience will be exponentially better. The quality of what we do and what we get to enjoy will be exponentially better. And then there will be things like, wow, I can really drive that autonomous car down the road and have it swing from vine to vine and be connected all the time and not worry about, only driving it in the city of San Francisco, right? So those are the things that I see. But I really want the heartburn level, the anxiety to go down a little bit about the real risks and the real challenges by just simply implementing it in pieces, in bite-sized pieces. And that's why I expect over the next at least half a decade. And just keep everybody coming back to that it's meant to be an enabler, an assistant, an accelerator, and not a replacement. I mean, once things get replaced over time, but that's subtle, and I'm expecting the next couple of years that will help a lot.
How do you see 5G driving IoT growth? Because I feel like we've talked about 5G for many years now, and we've had some recent guests on the podcast who are a little more bullish on kind of where it is and what it's ready for, but just kind of curious how you think about it.
The operators have been trying to get another dollar from you and I for a long time. That ARPU measure has continued to be elusive. At the same time, there has been challenges with fundamental things like handle of a device, being able to bring on new IoT devices. And 5G genuinely allows a platform to at least maintain the IoT proliferation, particularly with edge. And you don't always need spectrum for private 5G. But I think the idea of actually having a legitimate platform, LTE was not that, for sure. There was this big hubbub about, 5G won't be able to solve anything. We need more spectrum. How are the operators going to monetize that? That dust has settled. And so what we're finding is helping operators now leverage AI and Gen AI to softwareize, if I could use that word, their network, self-heal the network. And because there's tons of hype, and while spectrum is limited, there's tons of potential there, particularly if we can work with them to make the network that much more stable and scalable. That's the play. A little less about making more money. Maybe sounds a little daunting, but there's a number of ways to make their businesses more efficient.
Do you all work in the smart city space much at all? And what do you think about that? Because I was just speaking with somebody the other day who was asking me for kind of examples of smart city success and deployments, because on their side of things, they feel like they've been hearing about smart city growth and taking off for quite some time, but they haven't been able to witness it very much outside of maybe like smart lighting and smart parking kind of solutions. Is there anything that you all have kind of seen differently on that space, or where do you kind of see it is? I'm just curious.
I like smart metering, for example. We'll name drops on the big metering players, but if you think about being able to measure and modulate everything that you do, and everybody has a meter, right? Or a shared one, at least. And so love that play, because it's not only about managing and monitoring consumption, but, these things could be edge devices, for example. It could be an enabler to bring in more capabilities into the home. So those are the areas that I feel like we're getting traction. And then, of course, inside smart city for me goes all the way back into the house. And there's going to be an explosion of life monitoring that happens more than just your thermostat being 67 degrees. I mean, you're talking about, your glucose levels, those things that are extremely, I mentioned the pet example earlier, is my French Bulldog Francis getting the right mix of stuff in her food. Those are the kind of things that will, I think, be sooner than the broader smart city themes. The other thing I would have mentioned too, not to beat it to a pulp, but I'd still like this green RAM opportunity. We all, again, live on largely the wireless network when we're out and about. The major power consumption in that, along with the backhaul and the data centers. What happens if they were more dynamic on radios turning on and off, depending on load, depending on time of day? And I view that in a smart city context, and I do think there's real opportunity.
So Brian, if our audience wants to learn more about what you all are doing over at Capgemini, or just kind of stay in touch, or even follow up from this conversation with any questions, what's the best way they can do that?
I would just have a visit the web. We're trying to be more visible. We are a big company, and and global in nature. To visit us online. And to the extent that you're at any one of the big trade shows or environments to learn more, we'll be there.
Ryan, thank you so much for the time. Great conversation. Really appreciate it. First person I ever spoke to from Capgemini. So it was great to have you on, and hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
Thank you.